What's up guys, it's Apollo Uchiha here, back with the next part of What If Naruto Was Reunited with His Family. Now before continuing this, if you haven't then please do leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel, and without further ado, let's continue with our story. Our story continues. Following the briefing about Orochimaru, Team 7's days became that of peaceful recuperation. In preparation for their third exam, Naruto and his team were initially surprised to discover they were being allowed to compete, considering the fact that they hadn't made it to the tower under their own power. But Minato has said it would be okay considering whom they had to fight. Orochimaru was certainly no Genin. It would be cruel to disqualify them after they survived such an encounter. Those words from Minato had opened up other questions, such as what would happen to Gaara. The Yonda made it known that he would be permitted to continue participating in the exam. It would be an insult to Suna if they disqualified him on the grounds of his Jinchuriki status, while Fu and Naruto were allowed to remain. Minato had doubted that their identities hadn't made it back to Suna's Jonin instructor by now. He wasn't happy to know Suna had sent such an unstable Jinchuriki to their exams. But politics were politics. Disqualifying Gaara because of his status would be enough to injure Konoha's relationship with Suna, and that could lead to war. Orochimaru's veiled threat of Konoha being destroyed soon had come into consideration as well, but Minato waved off Kakashi's worries. He wasn't taking Orochimaru lightly, but he had a plan, an opportunity that Naruto had managed to acquire for them. During his fight with Orochimaru, Minato needed time before he could execute his plan, though right now they weren't in a position to go through with it. Link break. Team 7 now had 3 days remaining before the second exam came to a close, and Naruto was wondering how much of that time it would take before whatever his mother had done to Sakura would pass. Every time she was around him, she seemed uncomfortable, though noticeably nicer. Naruto had tried asking his mother what happened, but all he ever received in reply was a smile. Uncharacteristic smile from Kushina that made him think asking her was a bad idea. He shifted his inquiries to Karin after the third attempt with his mother. The only thing Karin told him was that Kushina had put her under some genjutsu that Sakura could not seem to break, and that after it was over she was a frightened mess, promising to never hit Naruto again. Naruto shivered. His mother was scary. A scary lady indeed. Another development within Naruto's team was the continued absence of Sasuke, though Naruto had a guess that what the Uchiha was doing. After finding out Naruto's mom was his godmother, really, what are the odds? Sasuke had been spending a lot of time with her, determined to get to know the woman whom Mikoto had considered to be such a good friend. Every once in a while, Naruto would hang out with his mom and Sasuke when he wasn't spending time with Karin, Fu, or Hinata. By the time only one day remained until the second exam's end, Naruto was rather good friends with Fu. The two seemed to just click, understanding each other fairly well. The fact that they shared similar history as Jinchuriki wasn't the only reason either. They were rather alike in personality as well. Both of them were stubborn and brash. They were easily excitable and quick to piss off, yet held a fierce determination to protect what was precious to them. Naruto found Fu to be a kind-hearted girl, and her ramblings was ever endearing. Naruto thought Fu's team was pretty cool too, though her male teammate, whose name he had yet to remember, was of the jumpy sort. The guy was easily frightened, but that only served to make Naruto and Fu in it on a pranking spree on him as many times as possible before the second exam ended. Fu's other team, Hijiri, was someone Naruto liked as well. She was pretty level-headed, and her calmness seemed to be able to neutralize both Naruto's and Fu's energy. What Naruto liked most about Hijiri was the fact that she was furthering her ninja career despite the fact that she was blind. The young Namikaze could respect her determination. After an hour of badgering her, Naruto even managed to get her to tell him how she managed to fight. He was astounded when he found out and understood why she finally ended up telling him. There was nothing anyone could really do to prevent it. As for Hinata, Naruto often conversed with her near the end of each day, happy to see her that her health had improved. She hadn't fainted in front of him since their conversation at Ichiraku during the first exam. He hoped he could really start becoming friends with her now. Obviously, Naruto still had a way to go when it came to understanding women, especially if he couldn't even figure out the excessive obvious Hinata. Hinata seemed to enjoy hearing about the usually outrageous things he done during the day, and Naruto found her to be rather calming. Talking to her was a good way to wind down and prepare to sleep in his opinion. Hinata was a good listener indeed, but he didn't let himself steal the whole conversation. He tried to get her to talk as much as he could, and though he wondered a bit about her stutter, it eventually grew on him, and there were moments where he even caught himself finding it cute. Naruto often attributed such thoughts to him getting tired, though that had nothing to do with it. At some point, more teams had made it to the tower, such as a Kabuto's team, Team Guy, the team from Oto, a team from Kumo, and Team 9. Counting his team, Hinata's, Fu's, and Gaara's, that meant 9 teams had passed the exam so far. He'd have to wait and see if any more teams would manage to pass tomorrow, but for right now, he felt as though the competition was stiff enough. Link break. The final day of the second exam had come and gone with no more teams making it through. The morning started early from Team 7, the 3 of them choosing to get in a bit of training before they were called for the announcement of the third exam. Not wanting to tire themselves out too much, Team 7 focused on less physically aspects of their skills. Naruto was meditating, attempting to speak with the QB, while a few of his clones worked on Akato Jutsu, improving the control he had over his wind nature and a new seal. Sasuke was putting Sakura under genjutsu that grew in difficulty each time she dispelled one, while also doing an exercise to improve his control over his lightning chakra. Their training lasted for around an hour and a half before Kushina had come to get them. Sakura fidgeted all the way to a rather large room as she walked behind the woman, completely unnerved by her mere presence the whole time. Sasuke and Naruto really had to wonder what the hell Kushina had done to the pink cat within those genjutsu. Sakura refused to talk about it. Within the room were the other 8 teams who made it through the third exam along with their Jonin senseis, Anko, Kakashi, a few other Jonin senseis of Konoha, and Sarutobi Hiruzen. After escorting her son and his team into the room, Kushina left, telling them that she was going to keep Karin company. Following Kushina's departure, Anko stepped forward and began to speak. The headset she wore allowed her voice to reach throughout the room, thanking to the speaker. First off, for the second test, congratulations on passing. As Anko looked over the assembled Genins, she considered how many of them had passed. 9 teams. Of the 20 that entered the forest, 9 made it out. Among the 60 participants, for 27 of them to get this far, thought Anko. I said I'd cut them down in half, but I wasn't expecting single digit. Anko did notice that some of them looked beat up enough to not get any further than this though. Kiba is particular. The only reason he was even in the room right now was thanks to the wheelchair his Yuga teammate had rolled him in on. If the next part of the exam was team-based, their whole squad would have been disqualified. Luckily for them, it wasn't. Hokage-sama will now explain the third exam. Anko once more spoke. Quietly, the bit of the celebration the Chunin hopefuls had begun. Listen carefully now. Then Hokage-sama, please, said Anko. Everyone was expecting the Sandan to step up, but instead they were greeted by a flash of yellow. Standing before them now was the Yondan Hokage, Konoha one and only Yellow Flash, Minato Namikaze. Most everyone was surprised to see a supposed dead man before them, the only exclusions being the Konoha Nin amongst them ranking higher than Chunin and the few Genin that had already met him. Congratulations on making this far, said Minato, completely disregarding the surprise of all the gathered shinobi. I know you must be all shocked to see me alive. And I assure you, if you stick around Konoha for the break between the second and third exam, you will come to understand how this is possible. For now though, let us get down to business, shall we? Minato was still met with shocked silence. It is about time for you all to know the true purpose of this exam. The Genin were confused, moving past their shock in order to discover what the Yondan meant. What true purpose? Asked Fu, her voice raising above that of her peers. The smile Minato once had on his face when he first appeared vanished. You may wonder why these exams have Genin from all over the allied countries competing. Some of you may think it is to strengthen our bonds with friendly competition. Others may think it is necessary to rise the level of our shinobi, said Minato, confusing many of the assembled Genin further. This wasn't the reason for the exams. That would be wrong, Minato continued. These exams are nothing but a replacement for war among us. His word left an uncomfortable silence in their wake. Our countries were enemies before we became allies, and to lessen the excessive bloodshed these exams came to be. You are here to give your all, to lay down your life for your village, in their quest for prestige. Prestige? Spat Kaori. We're putting our life at stake for accolades? Naruto fixed her with a look that made her shut her mouth, and Naruto looked in shock. "You never seen his father like this." "Yes, yes you are. You all are not children no longer." "Not anymore," said Minato. "It's time you realize that the world is not as black and white as you may think. Your village very livelihood could hinge on your performance in these exams. You see, for the third exams, you will be doing battle under the scrutiny of many important individuals. And these individuals are potential clients. You're the next generation of shinobi. Your performance during the third exams will show these clients what each participating village will be capable of. And that means something. The men and women watching you all will decide what village will receive their business and what village will not. These exams are not just exams. They are business transactions. They are a mission for each and every one of you." The Genins remained in silence. This was not what they had been expecting. They thought the tuning exams was just their ticket to promotion, not an important tool of the shinobi nations to garner the attentions of the client to their villages. "With that said, it's time I shared the bad news," Minato said. "Unfortunately, the people watching the third exams tend to be very busy. With that in mind, the third exam, which will be a one-on-one tournament, needs to be short and sweet. So we need to thin the thread. Right here, right now, we will have the preliminary rounds of the third exam. You lose here and this is as far as you go. Before we begin, anyone who doesn't feel that they are up for it can leave. Simply raise your hand now." The only one whose hand went up was Kiba. He didn't want to leave. He wanted to prove that he was just as good as shinobi as any other genin in the room. But the reality was that his leg had been crushed. Kara-san had done a number on him, and he would not heal in time for the third exam. Even with the assistance of the medic nins, not that really mattered now. Kiba wouldn't heal in time for the preliminaries, seeing as how they were starting now. Minato nodded Kiba's way and Kurenai wheeled the frustrated boy out. His hand clenched the armrest of his wheelchair all the way out the door. Minato gave it a moment, but no one else raised their hands. The preliminaries were now officially underway. With a nod, Minato stood back, allowing Gekko Hayate to take command as the referee, while one of the wall panels in Konoha, Jonin, began to rise. "I am your referee for the preliminaries, Gekko Hayate." Behind me, he coughed out, gesturing to now raised wall panel. Hayate looked rather sickly, making the Genin wonder if he actually be alright. "It's the electronic scoreboard that will create the matchups for these fights. Much like the actual third exam, they will be one-on-one." The Genin tensed and started to stare at the scoreboard. This was it. "Let the preliminaries begin," coughed Hayate as the scoreboard came to life, cycling through name after name after name before stopping. The Genins that were gathered started to stare up at the selected names. Fighter for the first round. Some breathed out a sigh of relief, happy that they weren't first, while others felt the exact opposite, wishing they would get to fight their own first fight. There we have it. The first round will be between Kunimitsu Taro of Takigakure and Uchiha Sasuke of Konohagakure, said Hayate. "The two of you stay here. Everyone else to the second level." Naruto looked at Sasuke and gave him a grin. "You better win this, Teme," he replied as a scoff from Sasuke as the boy's Sharingan whirled into life, as if there were any doubt left. "Dope." Naruto merely wondered and nodded, and followed after all of the other retreating Genin to the room's second level. He soon took his place next to Kakashi and Sakura before looking down at Sasuke and Fu's teammate, Taro. Naruto had to admit he felt sorry for Taro. Being matched up with Sasuke against right off the bat was unfortunate. "Are the two of you ready?" questioned Hayate. His coughs followed soon after. Taro jumped slightly, obviously nervous. The boy seemed perpetuously nervous though. As for Sasuke, he merely gave a smooth nod, then began. Despite his jumpiness, Taro was the first to move, flinging shurikens at Sasuke as the Uchiha recovered a kunai from his pouch. Sasuke deflected the shuriken as Taro moved in behind them, hoping to catch them off guard. That would not be. The only thing Taro had managed to do was bring himself to the Uchiha's range. Sasuke deflected the last shuriken back at Taro, forcing the boy to duck his head in order to dodge. Though not as fast as Naruto, Sasuke still had quite a bit of speed himself, and he used it to its fullest by closing the gap between him and Taro. His knee connecting with Taro's face, Sasuke followed up as he struck with a kick that sent Taro stumbling back. The young Takinin recovered well, getting his bearings fairly quickly. It just wasn't quick enough. Katon Gokyaku, a large fireball escaped from Sasuke's mouth, hurtling towards Taro at an alarming rate. Freaking out, Taro bravely jumped out of the way, his clothes signed from his close proximity to the mass of fire. Waiting for Taro was Sasuke. The Uchiha was Not wasting any time, taking advantage of the Taro's surprise, Sasuke swept him off his feet and placed a kunai to his throat. The match was over. I forfeit, squeaked out Toro. Sasuke merely smiled. Up in the stands, Fu waved a big sigh. Naruto, whose team happened to be between Fu's and Hinata's, looked over and gave his apologies. Poor Taro, whined Fu. Yeah, but no offense, Fu. He seemed kinda weak. Naruto replied, earning him a just deciding glance from Sakura. He was being rude. As for Fu, she merely shrugged it off with another sigh. Well, Taro's specialty is in Genjutsu. Considering who he was matching up against, he didn't really have a prayer. His loss is most unfortunate. In turn, Hijiri and Sasuke and Taro made their way to the second level. Once they rejoined their teams, the board came to life once more, and in a moment, second match was decided. Yakushi Kabuto versus Fu. Fu smirked at the appearance of her name, quite pleased to get her fight done with. Fu called Naruto. The mint-haired girl looked his way, her head tilted to the side. Good luck, Tebayo. Fu smiled at him and gave a nod before jumping over the rails, landing gracefully on the lower floor. Kabuto walked down the stairs leisurely, seeing no reason to jump down like Fu had. Once the two were facing each other, Hayate asked if they were ready. They said yes, and he began the match, stepping back as the two charged at each other. Fu was fast in the air, but it seemed that she was not lacking on speed on ground either. Kabuto was slower than her, not by much, but enough to give her a defensive advantage in speed. It was an advantage Fu capitalized on the moment the match began, though they both started the match in a dash at each other. Fu covered the distance between the two faster, forcing Kabuto on the defensive from the get-go. Fu first shot up, grazing Kabuto's cheek as he tilted his head, barely dodging the blow. Kabuto replied with a swift uppercut that didn't make contact. Fu had jumped back, avoiding the strike before her footwork brought her right back in Kabuto's broken defense. She delivered a fist to the gut before twirling around to his left side. Kicking at the back of his knee, Kabuto stumbled, falling forward. Catching himself, the bespectacled Genin forced his body to the right just in time to watch Fu's foot come down where his head had been once. Quickly scrambling to his feet, Kabuto dropped back in his stance and watched as Fu bounced on her toes for a moment before she shot forward once more, zigzagging her way towards him. Each of her steps leading her in a different direction than where she had once been going through. Up in the stands, Naruto whistled as he watched the fight. Fu's pretty fast, he complimented, and her style seemed hard to deal with. You hadn't already noticed that? Sasuke inquired, sparing a glance at his teammate before his eyes focused once more on the fight, Sharingan active. Well, last I saw her fight, I had my own problems to deal with. Plus, I was hoping up on the furry bastard's chakra. Naruto replied with a shrug. Kinda hard to make sense of things when I'm like that. Dad says I need to work on that. Naruto replied, not caring if he's overheard, considering that his team was in between the two teams that already knew about his father. Sasuke gave him his usual before speaking again. Yeah, I guess it would be. Sasuke agreed. Anyway, I got to see her use it in the forest, and not much changes from when she's flying. She's in and out of enemy's defense in a span of seconds, usually coming away from it unscratched. Based on this fight, at the very least, the way she moves makes it pretty hard to aim at her, if better at any long-range fighting too. Before now, I thought she specialized in mid to long-range combat, but it seems her taijutsu isn't slacking either. She hasn't even gotten serious yet. I don't see Kabuto winning. I couldn't count Kabuto out just yet, Sasuke. Kakashi interjects, his eyes focusing on the book. He may have taken these exams on multiple times, but he's one of the best up-and-coming Madiknin Konoha has to offer. Precisely, and personally I think the only reason he keeps reading is because he worries about others so much. Kabuto tends to do all he can to help out other Konohanins. It's gotten him into a few sticky situations in the past. Sasuke raised a brow at Kakashi's explanation, finding something of interest within his words as Sasuke shrugged. What does him being a Madiknin have to do with winning this match? Sakura inquired. And how do you even know all this stuff about him? Naruto adds, there weren't many reasons for a Jonin like Kakashi to look into a Genin. Naruto had learned enough from his parents to know the only reason a Jonin would do that with someone that wasn't a Genin, only his team or a potential one, was if something about the Genin was suspicious. Well, to answer your question, Naruto, I had a role in previous Chunin exams. I come across him before. As for your question, Sakura, a good Madiknin can use their skill in battle. Just watch and you'll see. Naruto hummed, thinking over Kakashi's response to his question before he decided to take it face value. It didn't really matter to him if he was really lying anyway. He didn't know Kabuto like that. Sakura merely did as she was told, interested to see her first glimpse of the combat medic Nin. Below them, Fu was still putting pressure on Kabuto, basically pushing him around the arena with her speed and erratic movement. After a powerful blow to Kabuto's stomach, the bespectacled Genin medic Nin stumbled once more. Seeing a chance to end the match here, Fu shot forward, aiming a kick at Kabuto's head. She never saw his smirk. Right before her attack could land, Kabuto's right hand shot up, grasping Fu's right ankle as chakra crossed through it. Fu winced as Kabuto moved her leg aside and leapt into the opposite direction. The Jinchuriki of Nanabe hit the concrete floor, rolling once before she attempted to stand. All she could do was to get to her knees. What did you do to my leg? Fu asked. Frowning, Kabuto answered. Kabuto made a smile, adjusting his gloves. What did he do to Fu? Sakura asked, looking up at her sensei. He used a chakra scalpel. Kakashi replied, and cut the tendons in her ankle. The last tumble of his was just an act. He wanted her to try kicking him. He knew she used her leg to try and end things. It makes sense. Sasuke contemplated, mentally giving Kabuto praise on his planning. He's been testing out how Fu's attack this whole time. He must have noticed that when he stumbles, she tries to finish him with her legs. It must be a matter of time before he decides to take them out. Heh, too bad that won't help him. Check on Naruto. He doesn't even realize he's wasting his time. Kakashi raised a brow at this, wondering how he could possibly be wasting his time until he saw Fu literally sprout wings out of her back and rise into the air. Briefly, Kakashi realized that Sasuke had said Fu could fly. He also remembered reading over a really good paragraph in his book as Sasuke said it. Suddenly, and with a reverse smile hidden behind his book and mask, Kakashi knew exactly where he'd forgotten. Back on the lower ground, Fu sighed as the Genin in the upper level gaped at her, making all sorts of commotion over the fact that she had wings. She didn't get it. They were shinobi capable of spitting fire, causing tornadoes, earthquakes, floods, and lightning strikes. All she had were wings. They shouldn't impress the Genins this much, in her opinion. Man, Fu groaned. I was really trying to save my ability to fly for later. You're pretty good though, tricking me like that. I'm not about to underestimate you again. With that, Peace said. Fu took a deep breath before exhaling a cloud of scale powder onto the arena. She kept her eyes on Kabuto. Not that it mattered. If he moved, she knew where he went. He was in a cloud of powder created by her chakra after all. My scale powder is highly explosive. So here's the deal. You forfeit or I'm gonna have to turn everything below me, which includes you, into a cloud of fairy death. Kabuto looked up at Fu, equal parts shocked and annoyed that she could fly. Really? She completely ruined all his work to cripple her. Restraining himself from huffing, he merely adjusted his glass and raised his hand in surrender. Some of the Genin wondered why he would give up so easily. But Kabuto was smarter than that. If he decided Fu was bluffing, he would most likely be dead. Basically, he just didn't see the possibility, risks, or waiting the reward, which would probably still be his loss. He wasn't out to fight the girl seriously. After all, this was fine with him. He hadn't wanted to make it to the next round anyway. Besides, Kabuto knew Fu wasn't bluffing. He heard about her from Orochimaru. I yield. Hayate nodded and looked at Fu. Fu of Takigakure is the victor. Fu smirked as she was declared the winner on the ground. The sound of confused and bewildered Genin ringing out around her. Not how she wanted to win, but she didn't really care. A win was a win, and Fu liked winning. Heh. That's how Fu gets it done, she boasted. As this is where I'm going to be leaving this part of, guys. I hope you like this one, and if you do, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. As this is Apollo Uchiha, and I'm signing out. Peace.